So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pokey Harris. I'm the Executive Director for the North Carolina 911 Board. We thank you so much for being here. I have to admit, Tom and I were surprised that all these folks want to come and hear about Next Generation 911, so we welcome you. Got to see some old faces, I should say, not old faces, but some familiar faces I haven't seen in a while, so that was really, really good. So thank you all very much. Gentlemen, do you want to quickly introduce yourselves? And then?
Sure. I'm Tom Rogers. I'm the Program Manager and Network Engineer with the 911 Board.
And I'm Matthew McLam. I'm the Assistant CGIA Director.
So, and we all have a huge critic sitting in the front row. Our big boss is here, our secretary, so we're all like, you know, if you have any complaints, really you don't have to say anything because he'll hear it himself. So, 911. And I see a lot of youngsters in here, so probably the first call was made way before you were born. 55 years ago, actually last month, the first 911 call in the country was made. It wasn't an emergency call, it was a test call to prove a concept that you could dial 3 digits to get to the emergency answering point. It was done by a representative in Haleyville, Alabama, just to prove the point. Then, from that time onward, we saw this give way to 911, basic 911. Who here remembers basic 911? Anybody? Come on, don't make me be the oldest woman in the room. All right, come on. And then we had enhanced 911. Who remembers enhanced 911? Who here did possibly the mapping for your jurisdiction for enhanced 911? Well, there's a longer story I'll be glad to tell you, but the day they delivered our mapping in the county I worked in, they delivered it for me to do on AutoCAD. I cried, so we'll just leave it there. But yeah, so it gave away to Enhanced 911, and Enhanced 911 was reliant on mapping as well. But that was our landlines, our houses, so it was pretty much static at that point in time. So then we started to see the proliferation of wireless devices. Who had one like this?
That's the Zach Morris phone.
Yes. And then we can see through the years all the way down now to the iPhone 14s. So our world has become more and more mobile, more and more wireless. Statistics for you, 80% of our 911 calls, probably even a little bit more, are wireless. And 68% of adults no longer have a landline phone. I finally this year cut my landline. I'm still having heart palpitations over it, but I finally did. So with wireless 911 or enhanced 911, we had phase 0 that gave, basically you could call using your wireless phone. Then we had phase 1 that would give the cell number, callback number. And then we had phase 2. Now, when we started going to phase 2 of wireless 911, we thought that was the end-all be-all. Thought we could find anyone, anywhere, as long as they had a phone. But that's not accurate. It's an estimated location. And basically, we're tracking that mobile device and that person using this technology and this capability. Then we had the introduction of VoIP devices, your multi-line telephone systems. Does anyone here work with a jurisdiction that has multi-line telephone systems and you're doing the mapping like a campus or something like that? Ooh, that makes me nervous because that means folks are not doing what they need to be doing on these campuses and these properties that have these phone systems. So there are 2 laws that folks who are operating these multi-line telephone systems need to be very, very much aware of. One is Carey's Law. That is a federal regulation that requires all phone systems to be able to reach a 911 answering point without having to call the digit 9. Then we have the Ray Bombs Act. And this federal regulation requires that a dispatchable location is sent across that multi-line telephone system. So that's where the GIS component for mapping these campuses and these properties come into place. Also, as we look at the smartphones and devices, everybody raise your right hand or left hand. Everybody has one. Boss, you don't have one? Oh, okay, very good. So, or we have folks who have other different types of wearables. So it's all giving away to these smart devices that are providing very accurate information So our technology has to keep up with that in the 911 world so that we can find the person utilizing these devices. So that geospatial call routing is more important now than it ever has been. So third-party applications now receive the details from our phones so that we can find the caller. That's in most 911 systems. Through databases that I'm sure all of you all are familiar with, MSAG, your anti-alley information, a call is made, it dips into databases with your telco, and then we find that caller. Next Generation 911 gives us the ability to validate and receive that data so that the caller is finding the most appropriate PSAP or public safety answering point. So it's turning the tide in that we're not trying to find you by a tracking device or a database, but you're telling us where you are. Our tabular databases from selective routers, Alley, and your MSAG. Who here has been responsible for maintaining an MSAG along with, preaching to the choir, as they say. Now, these databases that you're familiar with, they are eventually going to go away, but not until we see the decommissioning of those selective routers. So if you are maintaining an MSAG today, you're still going to have to do that for a little while longer. Here's just a visual to remind you of what you're doing with that, those MSAGs and those Alley databases. So as we've talked about Next Generation 911, there's not another person in the room that I could introduce, Tom, to talk with you all about what we are doing in North Carolina with Next Generation 911 and with our Emergency Services Internet Protocol Network, or our EZNet. Tom?
Okay. Well, Pokey's already covered the first slide, so we're good to go there, right? So as Pokey mentioned, the ESINet or EZNet or other names you might hear it called is our Emergency Services Internet Protocol Network. And this is provided by AT&T to run all of our 911 services across the state. This network was began its implementation late in 2017, and we are continually growing that and moving that along. Every PSAP in the state is legislatively required to join the EZNet. So everybody's going to be on it. That's just kind of is what it is. We work with CGIA and GeoCom to house the data hub that ensures all the mapping and everything goes into it in that I3 standard. So that can be used for the routing of the calls. As of today, we only have one PSAP to go. So we'll be jumping up for joy and celebrating when we get this final one to move over. We have a lot of what we call hosted PSAPs, and I'll go over this on the next slide, but 84% of our PSAPs are hosted. So, and I'm going to tell you that real quick and jump ahead for a second. So our hosted is we actually hold our phones, our call data systems, our call handling systems in our cloud network. And we have, just over 100 of those, 84%, are hosted now. We have 20 of what we call EZNet only. So EZNet only is they have their own on-prem phone system, and then they connect to the network, to the EZNet through the secure connection. And we've got over half of those are already actively engaged in moving over to hosted. So by the end of the year or first of next year, we should have well over 90% of our PSAPs on our hosted environment. As of today, you see we got 57 hosted Vesta and 49 Viper. The Vesta is the Motorola system, and the Viper is the Intrado system. Even though the numbers are a little skewed there, it's about a 50-50 split because more of your larger PSAPs are on your Viper environment. We are 99% of our population and our landmass covered today. Like I said, one PSAP to go. So as soon as that one moves over, we're golden on that. All 110 GIS jurisdictions have submitted 98% compliant I3 data.
Thank you all.
Yes. So, and we're going to touch a little bit more on that in a moment. I know Matt's going to drive home on the importance of that data and keeping it updated, especially on a routine basis so that it's good data. And the reason being is the very next point. 108 of our PSAPs are utilizing this data for call routing. So if you're in their jurisdictions and you call 911, you are using that mapping data to reach that 911 center. So it's critical that it is as accurate as it can be. So So as Pokey mentioned before, there's been a lot of progress made on abandoning legacy selective routers. Hard to say it 3 or 4 times in a row. But we're trying to get away from those. It's a lot of the older infrastructure that's holding those down in place. The wireless carriers, as you see there, they are actively and very quickly moving away from them. I think Verizon is pretty close to 100% moved over. AT&T Mobility, T-Mobile, all those are moving at an extraordinarily fast pace to abandon that. So they will be 100% off those legacy selective routers, which will in turn, long-term, get you away from MSAGs and things like that. So we've already mentioned that, about how critical that data is and just the timeliness of that. And kind of through there. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of moving pieces in between. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of them anytime. But, Madam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, so let's talk about the GIS side a bit. We're not going to go through this entire workflow, this entire graphic, but this really describes that process that Tom was just mentioning about when you call 911, if you're in one of those 108 jurisdictions that GIS data is being used to route your call to the correct PSAP. So as a call comes in, it's hitting that GIS data repository, that database. It's looking up to see where that call should go, and the answering time is very quick. We're seeing a lot less than 1 second that calls, 0.3 seconds, that call is being answered by someone in a PSAP. And that's a lot faster than when we were using the traditional method, using tabular lookup tables for call routing. So that's a great, and that helps obviously with response times. From there, it looks up in the AT&T repository, identifies which PSAP should get the call, and then routes that call appropriately. This is important, and one of the reasons that this is such an important thing for the state is the ability to route calls to other PSAPs if needed. If a PSAP for some reason becomes unavailable to take calls, or there's some type of disaster occurring and they need to be routed to another PSAP, that is now a possibility within the EZNet, and I believe even can go to other states that are also on the EZNet. So that's one of the importances of having up-to-date data and being part of the EZNet. So what does the process look like from a NetShin perspective? By a show of hands, who is responsible for either uploading data to GIS Data Hub or maintaining data such as roads, addresses, boundaries that goes into that? A lot of you, which is probably why you came today. So yes, thank you very much. We're very appreciative of that. This process started in June of 2019 is when we started doing the regional workshops. We had 4 regional workshops across the state. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, were probably there. We walked through the process with you, laid out expectations. From there, started working with you hand in hand on what is required, what data is needed, what are the attributes that are needed, and how are you going to get that data to us, and going through the whole error process. So yes, we thank you and appreciate that. In August of this past year, our final PSAPs uploaded data and we're I3 ready, and that's when we crossed that threshold of everyone in the state having I3 ready data in the EZNet. So that process now starts at the top in number 1. You're updating your GIS data. You're making sure that it fits the format that's required, the NENA standard that's been established. You're uploading that data into Geocom's GIS Data Hub. You get back that QA/QC report that lets you know if you have any critical errors, making sure you're staying above 98% on your alley to road center line match rate. That's an important thing that we'll talk about in a moment. Once that report's clean, that data is then sent to AT&T's EGDMS database and can be used for call routing. I just want to reiterate that your data cannot be used for call routing unless it is completely free of critical errors. So if you upload that data and you have one critical error on a boundary file, for example, we can't just upload your roads and addresses and other data and use that. It has to be completely free. It's an all or nothing process. So just remember that, and it will speak to the importance of ensuring that data is error-free. We focus on the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and coordination. That is the PSAP GIS data stewards, whether it be you're located in a PSAP, some of you are located within a GIS group within the county or a city or even a town, or you're a third-party consultant that's helping one of these agencies. The 911 board regional coordinators play an integral part in this process. There's 4 of them. If you don't know who they are, look on the website, come to us. Any of us, we can let you know who your regional coordinator is for your area. They have the state split up. They're very much involved, and they get a report every Sunday at 6 p.m., as well as Pokey and Tom and myself, letting us know where each agency is and when they last updated and how many critical errors they had as well. So they're keeping an eye on that and maybe reaching out if the numbers start to fall. And then Geocom and CGIA were there to help as well. Geocom is available as well as CGIA. We're there to help with any questions you have. We know that turnover is a real thing. You may have somebody new come on board, somebody else that's taken on this responsibility. We're there to help get them up to speed and make sure they understand the process. We can do that virtually. We can come on site and meet with you. There's a wide range of options there, and just want to make sure that this is a smooth process, not an arduous process, not something that takes a lot of time. We want to make it as easy as possible for you. There's the all green map. So we don't update this map any longer. Everyone is I3 ready. Pokey was happy to see that all green at the PSAP Managers Workshop back in August, just down the road.
I didn't know until they walked in that day to do their presentation.
Yep, so that was great. We were excited, and again, thank you everyone for your efforts on that. For Geocom's side of things, they provide obviously the data synchronization. They're combining all of the data that you're submitting from each PSAP. They're aggregating that into one statewide layer. They also send out reports that show how you line up with your neighboring counties. So be sure to look at that when you get those reports from Geocom to make sure that your boundaries are aligning with your neighbors and their boundaries. And we encourage you to work with them. If you don't know who your neighbors are, who to reach out to us, and we'll help you with that process. And we've even had meetings, joint meetings with the counties to help and coordinate that process to ensure that those boundaries line up. Sometimes it just works getting in a room, printing off a map and drawing it out on paper. As silly as it may sound, it's a simple process and it works still to this day. So happy to help with that process as well. So the migration, as mentioned, is ongoing. One more PSAP to actually join the EZNet. We'll continue to provide support as needed. As a refresher, these are the data layers that are required: your roads, addresses, your emergency services boundary, so fire, law, EMS, your PSAP boundary, your provisioning boundary, and that alley database. And that provisioning boundary, just remember, most cases it mirrors your PSAP boundary, but not in all cases. But essentially that's saying, hey, here's my boundary. This is the area I'm responsible for uploading GIS data. I'm responsible for the GIS data in this area. So there are over 5 million address points in the database. We're really excited that we're able to leverage that information, that data, and actually utilize that in the Address NC efforts. Darren will be presenting on that tomorrow. So you can see how that data you're submitting to NextGen 911 is being used across the state. And you already heard about that from Stephanie, Jane, and Ben earlier related to broadband if you were in that previous session. Over 850,000 road segments are also currently in the I3 Ready database. GIS Data Hub will continue to be used as the central point for uploading your data for the foreseeable future. Just as an FYI, as with many software applications, there are updates, and we're expecting an update from Geocom later this year for GIS Data Hub. We will be at the state side going through a pilot of that program and working with them to make sure that it's as seamless and smooth of a transition as possible from what you're currently used to the new platform. But we're really excited. Have heard that processing times may go from 1 to 8 hours that you're maybe experiencing now to much less time between getting your data back. So instead of submitting, moving on to another task and forgetting about NextGen until you get that report several hours later, it may be a much quicker turnaround so that you can actually go ahead and correct those errors and get it back while you're still focused on that task. So we're excited about that. More to come. There'll be an outreach campaign surrounding that when the time is right. So timely updates are very critical. We're asking that you upload at a minimum monthly. Some of you are experiencing greater growth, so it may make sense for you to update your data more frequently. If we don't have a road or address data in the NextGen database, then we're unable to route to it. It's going to fall back to legacy call routing methods, and we're relying on the older methods. So that's why it's important that you have that information uploaded in a timely manner, and that you're correcting those errors so that data can be used. So if you add a new subdivision, for example, and you just uploaded last week, maybe it makes sense, hey, let me go ahead and do another upload. That one, make sure that that data is free of critical errors. You haven't introduced some range overlaps or some other issue, but also it makes sure that data is in there and can go ahead and be used for call routing. Also, make sure you're getting your Alley database. Who has access to AT&T's PSP system and has received training on that? I see a few hands, not as many as went up earlier. So if you need access to that system, if you're the one that's doing the uploading, you need that access to that system or need to know who has access to that within your GIS group so that you can download a new Alley database when you upload each month. It's important that you're uploading a new Alley database because otherwise we don't know if that 98% match rate is staying 98% or greater. So we need that record and that information updated regularly as well. And then second to the last slide here, this is the current dashboard. It's not all green, but that's what we're striving for. When we started, this actually shows when each PSAP last uploaded, and that's broken down within 30 days, 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90 days, and then over 90 days. We're working very closely, especially with the PSAPs that are in that over 60 days category to really encourage them, and even more so than 90, to really encourage them to upload and find out why they're not uploading. Is it turnover? Is it unsure about the process? Is it you've forgotten how to do something? What is it? And really working with them to get on that routine to upload that data and that information monthly. So we encourage you to look at this. This is on the website, on the NC DIT 911 board website. So I encourage you to check that out. This is updated at least weekly. Usually towards the end of the week. So usually if you look at it on Monday morning, it's going to be the most current that it can be. So we encourage you to look at that. If there's a red outline around a county or a PSAP, that means their last upload had critical errors. So we're tracking that information as well. And again, that is sent out monthly to the PSAP and GIS manager. So if you are one of those and you're not getting that email monthly, please come see me to make sure that I have your information correct. And again, we're tracking that information weekly and discuss it on our Monday morning status calls. So with that said, I think that's everything that I have. Anything else to add?
No, Matt, the only thing I'll say in closing is if you delay providing your data or there are inaccuracies with your data, that literally can mean a delayed response to someone that's calling 911. So just keep that in mind.
All right. Are there any questions?
You got time?
Well, for everyone that's uploading, thank you very much. If you have any questions, if you would like a meeting, an on-site meeting with our regional coordinator, Tom, Matt, anyone, they'll be more than happy to come and do that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.